Check. All right. Cool. I see the squigglies. I think that means it's working.
Squigglies are usually a good indication.
Excellent. Well, welcome to another episode of Perception Evolution Project. This is the Blue is the New White series. We're sitting down here with Joe Crawford, our operations manager here at Windy City Equipment. I know he's been itching to get on this podcast for some time. Joe, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
All right. What's up, Peppers? My name is Joseph Crawford. I'm the operations manager for Windy City and just kind of an all-around tradesman for the company, helping out anywhere I can fill in.
That you do, Joe. That you do. Sorry, guys. Hey, I got this new setup. For those of you who don't know, Jake is no longer here doing our media and marketing, so I'm trying to figure all this out myself, and that's kind of what I'm doing here with the new camera angle, the microphones, the computer, and the Joe.
Which one's my camera? Which? Oh, this one. Hey, how's it going?
There it is. All right, so let's just, you kind of know what this series is about a little bit. Have you kind of got the gist of it since we've been in that big glass bubble out there?
A little bit. Why don't you break down the nuts and bolts for me, though?
All right, so basically what it's about is just educating our audience of the opportunities that exist in the trades, something that really isn't talked about as much as it should be, in high schools to young people, to really push the benefits that can be achieved through trade work, and trade work of any kind, not just, what we do here at WCE, but the skilled trades industries all combined.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was amazing going through high school, and especially knowing what I know now about the trade industry, just how disillusioned people were about it. When I was in high school, we have a wonderful program out here called EVIT that will actually take high school kids and put them into trade school, completely paid for as long as you're in high school. It's something that I knew only a few people that implemented, and even myself. Everybody always talked, you got to finish high school, get good grades, either get a scholarship or, pay for your college with loans, and that's the way to do it. You got to go to get a 2 or 4 year degree, and then you can then start thinking about what you want to do with your life. And once I got out into the real world, I graduated high school, and the first thing I did was go and do a trade. Didn't even plan on it. Had the whole high school, college, everything planned out, and interesting things happen. This was 2005. Hurricane relief work is what I went into, and learned that most people in that industry make good money. I mean, you're talking six figures, for people.
For hurricane relief?
Hurricane relief isn't necessarily the job. It's kind of just the scope of what you're doing. I myself was running and working on heavy equipment. So you figure you take a, $200,000-$300,000 front end loader or excavator, things that you build buildings with, and learn how to do that at 18, just right out the gate from high school. And
so how'd you get into that line of work?
It was interesting. It was just kind of going through a transitional period into high school, trying to figure out what you want to do. And I am one of those unique people that have the annoying two middle names, which is Charles and Francis, if for the listeners that can take the test at the end. And that year, 2005, that was the big Hurricane Katrina year. 2 hurricanes rolled through Florida. The first one, Hurricane Charles. Second one, Hurricane Francis. My mom was married to an amazing guy, another very well-rounded individual named Tom. And he took me out there with him. He knew a guy that was starting a company just to fill in the gaps that were going on. And I was blessed to be able to tag along. I mean, it was a rough gig. 17-hour days, 6 days a week most of the time. It was pretty much a regular thing that you're going to be up 3 a.m, drive a few hours to a job site, run that job site for 12, 14 hours, and then head home to get a few hours of sleep before you do it all again. But it was all knowledge based, and at that time in my life, that's all that I wanted. As a sponge, and I needed to absorb as much as possible. And that was the biggest thing that I learned, is all the different trades, and what that could mean for me, and not only just my career wise, but just what I could learn in life to just make myself and my surroundings better. The people that I met, and my stepdad, they could fix anything. They look at something, they laugh at you for not fixing it yourself, and then 5 minutes later you got a car running, or your house has power, your air conditioning works, and you're thinking they're racking up money trying to figure out how much this is all going to cost. And just the intuitiveness of learning a trade, especially something mechanical, is really appealed right out of the gate.
Yeah, makes sense. So what would you say from that career path right out of high school before your next one, what did you learn most? What was your biggest takeaway from doing stuff like that?
Work ethic.
Nice.
Work ethic is above all the biggest thing that I express to my own children. It doesn't really matter what you know or don't know in life. If you have a great work ethic, you can pretty much survive anything. You'll either learn to adapt, or you'll learn to think yourself out of the problem.
Yeah, I think that's a valid statement. I like the way that you put that. So when you were in high school, did you have that same work ethic, or did this help to develop that?
I was a musician. That was one of the things that they used to say when I first went into the industry. They'd hold my hand out and go, "Oh, you're not ready. I'm not blistered. I'm not scarred. I'm not anything." And they're just, I had a cozy life before that. Now I did have work ethics for what I wanted to accomplish in music. I was teaching music at a very young age. I was in it was a local band, but we did good things. I had very strong work ethic. There wasn't much downtime in my life, and I was able to do decent in school and carry all these extracurriculars. And I was in every band class that you could take, as well as carrying a full-time job, and just tried to keep up with everything. But I wasn't able to kind of combine my left and right brain with what I wanted to do. I had ideas, but I didn't know how to go about implementing, the tasks that I wanted to achieve. I always wanted to learn how to work on cars and learn how to fix things, but without anybody explaining it to me, the book stayed closed, just set it on the shelf, but I kind of learned how to meld those two things, the left and right brain. I took my proficiency, my attention to detail, and just kind of how I looked at everything from music, and used that love and vigor to learn mechanics, because it was something that I wanted to learn. It's no accident that I fell into a trade like this, or have been able to, by my standards, succeed in this industry, just because I love it. I love being able to fix something as much as I loved music the first time I picked up a pair of drumsticks, and it's one of those weird things. They say musicians can often incorporate their left and right brains in different ways. A lot of times they're decent at mathematics, if not excelling. It's often more easier for them. It's usually easier for a musician to pick up multiple languages, just because you learn kind of how to translate things.
Interesting.
And so I kind of learned how to translate that music into whatever I wanted. I use it for and pretty much any goal that I have. If I want to lower stress levels, I practice counting exercises in my head that I learned, listening to people learning how to do circular breathing, playing trumpet, stuff like that. You use these breathing exercises, calms you down, you stop thinking about the stress. I mean, it was just, I just wanted to learn how to adapt everything into my life, and now it makes no difference what I'm doing. It's all love.
Oh, very cool. So you kind of attribute that to being a musician in high school, the ability to interpret all of it that way and translate it into whatever, manifest it rather into whatever you want.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah, I took
never thought about it that way.
Took something very narrow-minded at the time when I was a kid. It was very, very narrow. It was learn just this. I just wanted to be let's say a good drummer, but now I can use those same the mannerisms, the implementations, just the strategy of music, and turn it into anything. And it actually relates a lot to mechanics. There's a lot of things, especially when you're learning about a vehicle, that you have to incorporate timing, and you can't go on to the next thing until that first thing's done. It's a lot of the same kind of stuff, and just adapting it.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to know too that Joe also helped me with this mixer. due to his musical background as well.
Just a little bit about a little bit goes a long way.
That's right. So let's get into what'd you do after that, and what was the transition like? When you left that and you went into another field, how'd that go?
I came out of Florida and I moved back to Arizona, and spent time with family. And right away, I moved back on my birthday and found a job the same day. That's the first thing I did. As I went out, I was like, I want to do what I want to do. And at that time, I wanted to work on vehicles. I wanted to, I knew a lot of mechanics that made good money. You're talking 6-figure incomes, 22, 24, 26. That's amazing. That's where people want to be in their 40s and 50s. And I knew that it would take a lot of work, and I knew it was going to be, not just OTJ on the job training, but also, I'm going to have to buy a beater and just learn how to work on it. And that's pretty much what I did. Is I got a cheap little car that needed pretty much everything done, and I got a job at a local mechanics company out here. Someone that I walked in the door, and personalities immediately clicked, and was able to start work the next day. It was a beautiful thing. I came back worrying about a job and just was just so elated to be back and happy. I think it shined through, and somebody took a chance on me, and worked in mechanics for 4 years. I did other side jobs and little things like that too, but always went back to it, as far as working on cars and being a mechanic and technician.
I think you'd like this book. I usually don't do this on the podcast, but honestly, I just finished this not long ago. Shop Class as Soulcraft. You ever heard of it?
No, but obviously it's a family member.
Matthew
B. Crawford.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting book. It relates the working with your hands to philosophy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting read. If you want to borrow that.
Absolutely.
We'll barter something. Give me your watch. You can borrow my book.
We'll have a watch. Will you take a soul?
I've got that already.
Oh, jeez.
I'm just kidding. We won't get into that. So you went from the heavy equipment with the hurricane relief in Florida, then back to Arizona as an auto mechanic working on cars. So what was the next thing that you learned? What was the thing that you already had the work ethic? You learned that from your first venture there. So what did you learn from then learning and being an auto mechanic?
Troubleshooting. Being an automotive mechanic taught me pretty much how to troubleshoot just about anything. You're talking electrical systems, air conditionings, batteries, capacitors, starters, everything. Stoichiometry, which is based on, mostly what we do in this company, which is how to make something heat, how to make combustion. You take basic principles and elaborate on them, and learn the in-depths of what to do and where to go when you find yourself at a crossroads as far as diagnosing, and learn how to implement that. I think probably the most challenging is if you've ever looked at a car schematic as far as the electrical and wiring. It's probably one of the most confusing things you can ever look at. It's one of the most in-depth puzzles, and that taught me how, just learning how to sight and read through one of those. I've been able to use that in almost every trade that I've ever worked in. Just because it's something, so simple that you aren't taught. I took industrial drafting, shop class, all of these things that are based around, industry schematics, stuff like that, and never once learned how to read a wiring diagram. That was probably the first time that I ever got handed something and just went, oh, geez, you got 17 pages of rat's nest, different colors, and you're just trying to figure out, you have numbers across the top and letters down the side, and everything has to be mapped, and, you start thing on one page, and you flip 4 pages later, and you finally find it, so it was a way to learn an in-depth puzzle, and that's kind of the way that I started looking at electrical is, it's kind of like a puzzle or a maze.
That's cool. You know what? I honestly, I think one of the things that is driving people toward, let's say, a white collar job in a white collar field is the ability to work with your mind. Nobody, they really don't want to do the work with your hands. They think it takes a special person to do that. And ultimately above that, I think there's a perception that if you work with your hands, it means you're not working with your mind. And I think the exact opposite is true especially after what you just said, with the wiring diagrams.
Absolutely. I mean, I am a fan of, a good vernacular, let's say. I love using words, and I love being able to use words to express myself in the most accurate way. A lot of times in this field, that seems to go over people's heads, and I completely understand. You're expressing two different parts of your brain, between reading a book and getting very knowledgeable about a particular subject, or working with your hands and gaining that muscle memory and learning how to do it. I mean, we know a lot of good old boys in this industry, that aren't going to be able to cite a thesaurus, and give you 10 different synonyms, for the word ostentatious per se. But they could probably fix just about anything you ever break in your life. Now, there's a difference between information and knowledge, and I think that information is very important. Being able to gain information and cite things, and being able to make these small correlations and express yourself, but at the same time, that implementable knowledge is very specific. There's no getting around how important something like that is. Whether you can speak above somebody's lexicon or not, that person may be able to do something that would just absolutely blow your mind, without using their words, without explaining it, without doing anything, just having knowledge rather than information, having the muscle memory to know what to do, and then implementing it. It's a beautiful thing.
I think it is. I think Webster's defines intelligence as the ability to apply knowledge in practical applications, which
Absolutely.
is also coincidentally another definition of the trades.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So where'd you go from there?
From there, I was looking for a different mechanic job. One of the things about mechanics is, in order to move up, you got to move out. You kind of float yourself around to get raises and gain opportunities and to gain more, a better wealth of knowledge. And I was in a job interview for a position at a shop, and I was talking to the guy, and I was like, look, I really love learning the mechanics. I don't think that I'm tapped out on my knowledge to gain from that in the least. I think I have so much to learn. And I was like, but I'd really like to find something more, more, as people would say, white collar, clean collar, clean hands, working with customers all day. I've always been very personable, and a lot of times in shops, I found myself in this middle position where I'm doing a lot of the shop manager's work, because I can work with the customers, I can haggle with them, I can get things done, and my attention to detail comes in. And I'm sure you've seen here, you bring up a topic of something that happens 2 weeks ago. Oh, well, I know the PO number, I know, the invoice number, I know this, I know how much we charge, how long it took, just being able to reach and grab that information. And I wanted to be able to find another way to express myself working with people. And, usually you see, management make pretty decent money, bonuses, stuff like that. So it was a little bit, of a selfish endeavor, as I wanted to find out how I could be in management. And I like leading people, so management felt like a good place for me, at least topically. And in this job interview, I asked about that. His answer changed the course of my life. I didn't even know it. And what he said was, I'm looking for somebody that is an A-plus technician. I want a veteran. I'm talking 30, 40 years in the business that just is the ace. And I was like, I absolutely agree. What's the trouble with finding a person with those qualifications? They're all broken. That was his honest response. And he's like, I'm kind of in the same position. My knees, my back, my shoulders, it's hard for me to survive, let alone be able to thrive. And I think a lot of guys are in this position. They're on disability because of, just the strenuous, life of being a technician. And, I was having kids. I was still young. I was in my mid-20s. And I realized that when I'm 40 or 50, I didn't want to be broken. I didn't want to be out of the candidacy of a good job position, because I didn't think long-term about it. And I started thinking long-term about it. So I actually, I left out of mechanics. I had to get 2 jobs because it's a good paying job. There's plenty to do in a mechanic shop, and there's plenty of ways to make money, and, and honest ways to make money, which is, one of the hard things that I struggled with in mechanics is because we've all been to that shop that swindles, and it ripped my heart out. I could not be that guy.
Yeah.
I pictured my grandma. I pictured, my sisters coming in. I pictured all these people, and I'm like, no, I don't.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I don't want to rip these people off.
Yeah.
Like, so, I just kind of went a different direction with it, and because I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that technician, and like I said, I had to get 2 jobs. And I started working, dispatch, and kind of similar to what I do now, helping customers, being able to be there for them and get things done. I still had a drive to get things done for people. And, went into office work, dispatch, management, small things like that small things that I could just learn how to run an office. Again, I was just more management minded. I wanted to gain abilities that could further me on that endeavor. So, kind of just started learning operations. I always had second jobs and did side work and, kind of had this passion still. But at the time, I was money hungry and needed the work. So I kind of pulled out in a way and started, just kind of learning how to be a good manager. And then from that, I learned that I didn't want to manage people. I wanted to lead people, and I wanted to figure out how I could lead people. And, that was a big drive of getting where I am there. But there's still always the want to, learn how to do stuff, fabricate things. One of the, I saw a T-shirt on a guy on TV. I can't even tell you where. It said fabricator. It's got the Webster's definition type of thing on it, but it says fabricator. I make things that you can't.
Nice.
That was it. Like the coolest things I've ever seen was made by one person, and that person holds on to that like it's a pride stick that they love those things. So after a few years, I was in a position, my wife was making decent money, and I needed to get back into the trades. I was itching for it. I took a few months off and just did mechanic side work and was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I started, manufacturing, CNC machinery, quality control and stuff like that, learning how to, again, just build things, make things, learning another side of the industry and kind of better my knowledge with it. So we went from, mechanics. We went from very intensive hurricane relief work to, labor intensive mechanics to cush office job, to right back into it, working on machinery. I did all the upkeep for the machinery just because whenever I'm using something, I want to learn how it works. Best way to do that is maintenance. Yeah. So learn how to maintain the equipment, learn how to work on it, learn how, I wasn't one of the people that could do the very in-depth, programming or anything like that, but I learned anything else that I could about the business. Worked my way up through that as much as I could, and then got a phone call from an old friend, old close family friend, and wound up here. It was one of those situations where it was like, hey man, I know you're looking to take on a new career. I know that you're already in the middle of taking on a new career, but I think this is something that's right up your alley. And, no promises to, whether or not personalities would clash or if the hours or the money was right or anything like that, and walked into the interview and met probably one of the coolest group of people, I've ever been privileged to meet. And
oh, thanks, man.
5 years later, man, right here still.
Here it is. Yeah. I think you're like the fourth longest tenured person here at this point.
Yeah. Minus owners,
Right. Right.
Yeah, we got.
So we're going to have to wrap it up pretty soon so this video doesn't cut out. Mm-hmm. But I'm definitely going to want to do this again with you because I feel like there's a ton more that we can extract. So before we hop off, and kind of, I'm cutting you off in like the middle of your story, and I understand that, and I'm sorry. We'll get them back on. I know we will. But how would you say that the trades helped you or are helping you live your definition of success?
It just the independence of being able to think myself through a situation, no matter.
Good answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of something that I pride myself on. And, it's actually this is a humble brag here because I'm not bragging about myself, but it's why my friends call me. It's not like the only reason, obviously, you know, there's a lot of love there, but it's great to be able to have people that rely on you and depend on you and call and ask your advice or help, you know, to help troubleshoot. It's a great point of pride just to be able to adapt and change, and for people to be able to put my name out there. Hey man, this guy gets stuff done. You know, it's a great attribute that I hold upon myself, and it's great that I can have people, you know, inflect that back upon me when I put it out into the world.
That's probably one of the best answers I've heard on this show. Congratulations.
You heard it. You can't unhear it.
So that's about all we've got. Hopefully this one turns out pretty good. I really hope it does.
Yeah.
I want people to hear it, and then we'll do this again soon. We'll get the second half of the story, or however much is left.
Yeah. Well, I led us up to a stopping point, which is where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And I've got a lot more questions I want to ask, but we'll do that again.
All right, man.
So, Joe, thank you for coming in to my office, which is where this studio is now.
Absolutely. It's cozy.
It is cozy. It's a little warm.
Awesome, man.
I'm feeling a little moist. But other than that, thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Peppers.